Hello and welcome to Young Blossom 25 Future Leaders Revealed. I'm Inga and with me is Vaios, my co-host, and joining us today is Panos Anastasiou. Panos is a procurement vice president and supply chain executive who turns complex global spend into competitive advantage and business growth. From FMCG and food to pharma, Panos has led multi-regional teams managing hundreds of millions in direct and indirect categories, driving transformation, organizational redesign, and cost optimization across Europe, the US, and beyond. You have high-performing teams across continents, redesigning organizations that actually work, and turn sustainability, innovation, and third-party risk into value instead of bureaucracy. You're passionate about the next generation of leaders, and you care about giving back, and we will talk about that in a second. You're married, you have 2 Gen Alpha kids, and I got curious to have you on the show when you were talking on LinkedIn about your experience going to school and explaining to Gen Alpha what a procurement vice president actually does the whole day. Panos, very, very welcome. Parts of it is from me, from our previous conversations, but most of it is what AI had to say about you as a professional.
The artificial intelligence is correct in the fact that it has trolled and scrolled all the LinkedIn profiles and everything that I've posted online. So professionally, mostly accurate. Also, mostly I wrote it, so it's accurate because most of it I wrote. It misses all the personal stuff of like originally Greek, traveled and worked in 5 countries, 2 kids, multiple adopted dogs, passion for people, animals, and humanity in general. Thank you for the opportunity to be with 2 other lovely human beings, the 2 of you today, to chat about Gen Alpha and everything else that we're going to cover.
Excellent. Well, it's fantastic to have you on the show. Given you're sitting between Gen X and Gen Z, you're a millennial, is that correct? Okay.
I am a Xennial, technically.
So you are between Z and
No,
Wow.
they're called Xennials with an X. It's Generation X and Millennials, but because it's the 77 to 83 window, and I'm exactly at 81, we're still the kids that were in the streets playing around, but at the same time, I had an Atari since I was 5 years old. So we transitioned with technology, before technology and after technology. We saw the first mobile phones. I'm between the 2 of you, so we're not that far off. But I have a lot of, I have traits even from the boomers, if you want to talk about it, frankly.
Well, we will reflect on all of that. Many of our listeners will not know what Atari is, but they can Google it, no worries. So we will cover a bit of the experience with our future leader generation, as well as we're going to talk about what has happened on the prior podcast and going to reflect on some of the learnings that we gained about that generation. And of course, we're curious to hear your perspective. So we're going to throw some things at you and see how do you react. And you're probably the biggest fan of our show. That's how you exposed yourself. So I have to ask, without wanting to put you on the spot, which is your favorite episode?
Ooh.
If
Out
you
of,
have.
I do. So Ilia Kokalli, if you listen to this, out of all the shows, and I haven't listened to all of them, I've listened to 70% of them by now. I got hooked on them, frankly, and some of them I ran back to back. But Ilia Kokalli, you were a star for me. You were, for your age, your experience, your maturity, I was blown away. If you ever need a job, I don't have one for you, but I will find one for you.
Excellent. Well, I'm looking for a job if you have one for me. Maybe
Change your
later.
name to Ilia and we talk about it.
Right. Vaios, you want to kick us off?
Yes, absolutely. Pano, welcome. Welcome to Young Blossom 25. I have to say, I was really looking forward to having you on the show. I was so much intrigued by our first discussion, by everything you shared with us, your passion, your energy. For me, it was amazing to get to know you at first stage. And you seem like a guy who I would really like to go out, have dinner, have a proper drink in a bar and discuss about everything, about life in general. Inga mentioned at the beginning that you attracted attention by sharing your experience in the classroom, where you were trying to explain to Gen A what a VP in procurement does the whole day. Now, don't get me wrong, it's not the sexiest job on earth, this is for sure. I hope you will admit that. But at the same time, I would like to know how you approached it. What did you learn and how much, damage did it do to your relationship with your kids?
So the good thing is my kids are a bit younger. They are 12 and 10, and I was talking to 15 and 16-year-olds. So I did little damage. My kids were super proud that I was talking to their school, and they could actually talk to some of the 15, 16-year-olds later about dad and dad being there. As a prep, I really try to dumb it down. And dumb it down is not the right expression. I try to simplify it and make it easy to understand and non-corporate and non-boring. And that was not good enough. I thought I had simplified my speech about procurement is like trying to buy things that land in your fridge or buying the services or buying your PlayStation. And I was part of another couple of other professionals from finance and business intelligence, and we still over intellectualized for 15-year-olds.
So what did this leave you with, Pano? Any lessons, anything that you took back home?
First of all, it's great to see the 15-year-olds that care about they were asking questions about impact on the environment, about I'm advancing it by saying morality and ethics, but they were digging on the values of the companies and what do we do as whether it's a product or a service. Surprisingly, none of them actually asked about salary and money, which are things that some of the older generations may consider more important. Of course, we need to take into account that it was a private school, not an extremely expensive one, but these are affluent kids, so maybe money is not a bigger concern. The other thing that was surprising is you get the simple questions that we forget. How many hours do you work? How much do you travel? And some of it, because I dug behind some of the questions. Some of it was my parents travel a lot. So if I become like my parents, do I get to have the same family life with parents out of the house, which I do not condone, frankly? And at the same time, some of them wanting to travel a bit more the world and see different places. And when people like me open up and say, I have lived and worked in 5 countries, they're like, oh, wow, okay, you've been into places. I was not alone. There were a number of executives in the room that had gone across multiple countries, including China, Japan, India. So that was intriguing to them. They're more citizens of the world and want to understand the world and see the world. I'll leave it there. That's my biggest, one of my biggest reflections.
And I guess we all, 3 of us, are educating, are trying to influence Gen Alphas. I have also 2 kids, similar age of yours. But you experience Gen Z in your workplace. How is it to work with them? What kind of messages do you get? Is it easy? Is it difficult?
It is different. And I will start with a premise of my principle is Gen Z currently and then Gen Alpha will inherit this world that we live in and we build in. So first of all, we need to take care of it so we hand over something proper and better than what we got. And also we need to acknowledge that whether we like, and some of us, whether we like their style or their preferences or their attitudes or some of the work or life culture they bring in, it is more for us to adjust to them versus them to adjust to us, because life goes on, life continues, and we need to remain as adaptive and flexible, more adaptive than flexible for them to train them, educate them in the work environment, integrate them properly, because they're going to run it. I mean, the 3 of us, maybe we're around in 20 years, maybe we're not, and we will have a different capacity of it, but they will be 40% or 45% of the workforce, and we need to prepare them for it. So it's for us to adjust. And that's very different to, I have a number of presidents at times around who complain about we need to see more people in the office. Gen Z are too demanding. They're spoiled. They're too opinionated. They're lazy. There's a lot of taglines that I don't like, and we need to meet them more than halfway, in my opinion. Some people say halfway, I say more than half.
And why? So, just a provocative question. What's different, or is it different versus our generation? So, when we started working, I guess the starting point is the same. The previous generation, the same thing they told about us when we started working 25, whatever years ago. They said, we're lazy, we don't get it, we don't understand, yada, yada, yada. I didn't feel that there was a lot of adjustment to me as a generation versus me adjusting to that generation. But maybe it's a perception. Whereas now the conversation is a lot more, we need to adjust a lot more to the younger generation versus them adjusting to us, if that makes sense. Well, is it, do you have the same perception? Yes. Why is it different now versus how it was back then?
And in I can only talk about my experience. And in my experience, I had to adjust more to the workplace I entered. And I entered it in Greece. And then I was a baby buyer in Geneva. And I almost got fired in my first baby buyer job. And I have horror stories from that where I had to mold and fit in and adjust my character to survive. I think why we're talking about it, or at least I talking about it differently, I think we've gotten more educated as both corporate professionals and also parents about how it is to raise young adults and bring them into society properly. So I hope we're more educated than the previous generation. We're more aware. We're more open to do things differently. At the same time, that doesn't mean pamper, and that doesn't mean let them land, not let them necessarily land softly. Let them experiment, let them fail, give feedback in a productive manner that they understand, and they become successful in their own rights, learn and experiment on how to get better. So it's a balancing act, but it needs to be a conscious balancing act. The previous generation, or maybe the environment we grew up in, was more about, I don't care, I pay you, you do what I tell you, because otherwise you won't get the money or the job. And you have the other extreme of some of the younger parents today of, my child is my only child, it's my precious child, I raise it in a bubble and I put it in a glass house because I don't want it to be damaged. And then that overprotective child may land in a society that is more adverse than it expects, and the suffering will be sudden and harder and very difficult to adjust. So both sides of the equation need to be considered.
No, you mentioned adjustment. You mentioned that you needed to adjust to an environment that was not fitting you in your first job in Geneva. Now, it seems to me that this generation won't take much of a time or effort in order to adjust to something that they feel is not fitting them. What's your perspective on that?
Maybe that's a better way to do things. I had to, as Greeks say, I had to put water in my wine to survive the corporate environment when I entered it. I have completely changed perspective now. I am in a very laissez-faire, laissez-passer type approach as we speak of, here's who I am, here's what I can do for you, here's what I'm good at. If you like me, you can have me. If you don't like me, I'll find my own crazy village and live in that. The Gen Zs are doing the crazy village approach from the beginning of, I will find my people. I will be who I am, and I will fit where I can fit, and where I don't fit, either I will leave or the system will chuck me out. But maybe that approach, and we'll need to see how it develops, maybe it is better for them to find the place they belong sooner. It took me 20-something years to really wake up and be, that's who I am as a person, that's who I am as an energy. These are the people I want to be around and manifest my energy with. And what goes against my energy or sideways, I will not accommodate. I will not be a part of. But I developed this type of wisdom at the age of 40 plus. If you develop it at the age of 30, after having bounced 3-4 different jobs and environments, you saved 15 years versus me. Good on you.
Yeah, I think that's when we started the show and we started talking to Gen Z, we had hypotheses, we had certain understanding, and we kind of validated that, those hypotheses and understanding. For sure, from the conversation we had so far, we understand better why is purpose so important, like what's driving that ultimate conversation about purpose. What does flexibility mean for them? How do they set boundaries? And I think that boundary setting is exactly what you said. I completely subscribe to what you just said. It took me also 20 years to just accept, well, this is an environment I want to be in. This is an environment I don't want to be in. And I will not compromise. Here is who I am. There are certain values. There are certain things that are important to me, if we don't want to blow it up to, values and be over dramatic. But there are certain things that are important to me. And I will not accept anything less of than this. It took me 20 years. I'm 47. So here I am now, all very confident, right? Whereas they are already at that stage by coming in. Where do you think is this coming from? Like, why is it that they have that level of confidence at a relatively young stage? What's driving this? Do you have a hypothesis? Do you have an observation?
My hypothesis on it is twofold. First of all, every next generation starts to, they observe the previous generations. So when people like the three of us and now that I have observed over the last 3-4 years that there are more crazy like us. And the more I keep my eyes open and my ears open for the Ingas and the Vaios and the similar to Panoses of the world, the more I find people with passion, with a fire for purpose. On the Tony Robbins equilibrium, I've now reached the contribution phase where I do not care about money. I do not care about titles. I do not care about self-esteem. I do not care to prove myself. I care to have people that I love and give to the people that I love and contribute, whether it's at home, whether it's with broader society, whether it's at my job as a CPO, but it's love and contribution. The more we resonate that way, that I think that absorbs by osmosis to the Gen Z and then hopefully to Gen Alpha, and they come with that faster develop. So that's hypothesis number one. Hypothesis number two of the equation is we are in a hyper-connected social media, whatever type of media world. When we grew up, it was TV and radio. So there were not that many crazies like us on TV and radio. Now you want to find your own type of crazy, it's 2 clicks away. It's a YouTube, it's a Spotify, it's a TikTok. It's like find people that talk about love and contribution in procurement. Panos will come up. And similar to Panos. Find people that talk about working 80 hours a week on eating one pizza. People from consulting will come up. I'm sorry for you guys, by the way. So good luck with the pizza. So whatever you want to find, you can find. So they come more educated, more knowledgeable, more aware of what is possible or what exists. And they can try to figure out whether what they think they like is really what they like. Because we've also seen come and experiment. They come with one specific assumption and hypothesis of, I think I want to be a CEO one day, or I think I want to run an NGO one day, or I think I want to save animals in Africa one day. And they do it for a bit and they're like, I need to adjust. This is not what I thought it is. I thought I would actually be on the ground helping elephants reproduce, and I'm actually doing Excel files on elephant population. That's not exactly what I asked for. And I
It
do
happens exactly this way. It happens exactly this way. It's like joining corporate, right? You're going into marketing and you think you're going to go and do, shooting campaigns and all that kind of stuff. And what you do is raising POs and, doing spreadsheets to track your A&M budget. So sorry.
And the question we need to ask ourselves is, because we also entered with high aspirations of, I'm going to be a sourcing manager, and that means I'm going to run a team of 3 and I will not do any crappy work. And 80% was crappy work. We persevered, we endured, we managed to get through the other side where most of our work today, at least for me, is more productive and more positive versus admin. But I also have the executive title and the team of 130 and 25 years of corporate experience to get there. Will the Gen Z be willing to go through that level of adversity and hardship to get to where we are? I don't know. Will they need to do all that in an age of AI? Because we had to shovel a lot of poo-poo, as Inga says. You can do AI shoveling you can have AI shovel the poo-poo or some of it versus you do most of it.
It's a very, very good point that has two kind of two sides to it, just two things to it, sides to it. One is work will transform. The type of work will transform, and a lot of administrative work that was very present, is still quite present in the workspace, will be done by AI. Like as all the AI evolution is happening, there is no need for expensive workforce to do something that does not require a lot of brain capacity, right? The other piece is experience and gaining experience and learning speed. And many organization, which leads to, when we started, we probably kind of stuck for the first job for, 6, 7, 8 years, unless we got fired because we were completely useless. But the tenure in the first company that you join, not the first job, first company, I should say, the first company that you join, there is a significant difference between the boomers, who on average in their early development were 8 years, then Gen X/Y still was 5+ years, and Gen Z, now arguably Gen Z is entering workforce now, right? Like they don't have a ton of experience, but it tends to be 1 to 2 years. So how fast are they learning and how much do they want to stick around and what makes them stick? I think that's the question that many companies are having, because the churn that they're seeing is predominantly with younger people. It's not, they don't seem to value titles, as you said, right? Progress. They value learning, But the companies, the structure of the companies and the development, how companies are offering development is very much linked to here is a promotion, and only with the promotion you will get more money. Here is the next job. Whether you want to do the next job, you don't want to do the next job, this is not a point of conversation, really. The path tend to be quite predefined. How much of the change do you think is required, and how do you instigate it? Because many companies don't see the need necessarily for change. How do you instigate it?
So I'll quote my employer N-2 before, or my employer two jobs ago. Procter and Gamble at some point started to talk about lateral movement and lateral learning and cross-functional, but also experience across the same level, but doing different stuff. And this was 10 years ago. And I was 35 and I was senior director, and I was listening to this and I was like, who cares? I want to be VP. I want the title. I don't want lateral movement. I don't want lateral learning. I've learned this level. I want the next level. And for me, level was always about not the title, but I wanted more people because I'm very people oriented. So bigger level gives me more people to grow and touch and develop, etc. But that 10 years ago works great for Gen Z, because every person in Gen Z, including the people in your podcast, everyone is like diversity of experience, breadth, touch different things, learn different areas, go across different functions, locations. So the whole lateral thing for them, which is a priority, can be done. And P&G showed it at the time back in 2016 to 2020. They were ahead of their time. I think it was too early. I think it's super applicable now. At the same time, it can work in mid and big sized corporations. In smaller sized corporations, either you have breadth because the company is too small, so you have to do a bit of everything by default. But if a company needs you to be specialist in something, and you as a Gen Z don't want to specialize for too long, then after 2 years you'll move. If I don't know whether I answered the question, because I feel like I'm going around. Breadth of experience. How do we give them breadth of experience? And different to Gen, I'll give a specific example. I used to have a director that she was a Gen she was a millennial. I wanted her to do a bit of more diverse job and take a few extra responsibilities and go a bit more sideways to learn and develop, etc. It's just like, no, it's not more title, it's not more money, it's not more people. I don't want to do it. A Gen Z would be, yes, give it to me. So I'm like, okay, which I only noticed 2 years later. I'm like, I should have gone to a Gen Z, not a millennial, and actually do that proposition. Because the Gen Z would have jumped on the opportunity. I was talking to the wrong generation.
I think that describes really, really well. And more companies are going and encouraging the lateral moves to diversify your career. Now, also more and more organizations are becoming flat in terms of hierarchy. So there are a lot less positions as well. So of course, whether the companies are very consciously encouraging, diversifying your career, or whether it comes as a result of, there is not enough to grow, or whether there is a bit of a combination, you realize that by diversifying your working population in terms of skills, you actually get better leaders for any of the jobs. So somebody who has done, marketing and sales can be a better GM than somebody who has just done sales. And equally other functions. Communication, which is a passion point. We talk about what is your observation to the communication skills, with the exception of Ilia Kokalli, who apparently did a great job for her age and maturity and all of that. What's your observation on communication skills and the ability of Gen Z to articulate themselves in different circumstances with different target audience, in different contexts? How do you assess that space?
It's a challenge. And it's a challenge. And this is looking it through our generational glasses, because we need to put my glasses on. We need to know what we're wearing when we look at it. We got trained in multiple Word and PowerPoint and Excel versions where a boss would, or multiple bosses would give feedback, and the only version that would actually go into a proper presentation would be V7 final dash extra final. right? I used to get my Word documents red inked with a physical pen. If I go and do this to a Gen Z,
Sorry, Panos, I have to say that because most of my managers were P&G managers, and I know exactly what you're talking about. I know exactly what you're talking about. Calvin, for Tom Albold, I love you really very much, but I did hate the presentation rounds with you. Continue, please.
Yep. So we grew up in that environment. I get documents and recommendations at times from people in my team or my previous teams where it comes from like 3 levels below. And I have a tendency to start, if it's 80-20, I'm not good. It's not good enough for me. 90-10, I let it go. But at 80-20, I start correcting it myself. I think we need to, when we say we need to adjust, that's part of the adjustment. That's part of our own generational perfection OCD that we need to fix for 2 reasons. One is, am I really changing the content? If the context is correct and the outcome is correct, who cares about the content? If we recommend we're going to do A and we have the valid reasons for A, we should be doing A. The fact that it doesn't say it perfectly doesn't change the decision. The second thing we need to adjust, and we also need to train Generation Z to adjust, is you currently have LLMs where if I get a record that is not very well written, first of all, 2 things started to happen. First, I can throw it into the LLM and be like, Gemini, ChatGPT, Claude, fix it for me. But also, if I have the LLM and I'm asking it to fix it for me, I'm now starting to ask the LLM to say, give me the key points and what I need to know to make the decision, right? And I get the summary of it. I'm like, is this summary correct? And do I approve it versus based on the summary? And I've started to reflect on this recently where I am so close to asking my teams to be, can you write like 3 bullet points in a decision? Have all the supporting data somewhere else. Make sure it's bulletproof. That nothing is bulletproof, but make sure it's the right thing to do. Give me the decision. Give me the 2-3 things that support the decision. If I agree with it, I'll say yes. If I have questions, let's chat about it quickly. And if I need to go deep dive, tell me where your data is and I'll put my LLM to ask the questions. Because the way of working is changing quite a bit. I can go use an LLM to validate your thinking by now and see if that thinking is correct. Now, the big risk on all that, and I think I've written this online a couple of times, and by the way, I need to stop bumping the table with passion because I'm also bumping the camera and the camera moves. How do you develop critical thinking in the new generation? That is probably the biggest skill. Teach them. We were taught how to think by struggling, by good bosses, by bad bosses, by the red pen, by being challenged. That needs to remain. And I think the best way to do it is conversationally with the Gen Zs in a room about what is your thought process? How did you go through the thought process? How did you land into your outputs and outcomes? Have you thought of X, Y, and Z? And it requires a lot of non-directive coaching, open-ended questions to help them through. If you think you're going to correct them and educate them by just telling them in a directive mindset of you're an idiot and you should have thought of A, B, C and you should do this next time, the moment you said you're an idiot, they've lost you. You're done. You're cooked. So critical thinking is super important. So if you're a manager listening to this, if you're trying to do this with your kids at home, this is the same thing you should be trying to do with your Gen Zs in the office. There is no difference for me. Critical thinking development. It is time consuming. It is energy draining. It is not easy. But if we don't do that, then they will land in a world where the LLMs take over and everyone is an idiot. And it becomes idiocracy and we become the house cats and we have the AI superpower treating us like pets. That's where we are.
I think there is just on this one. I don't know if it's more time consuming, but what you're describing is shifting the time instead of, paying too much attention whether all the wording in the presentation has been, set correctly and is crisp enough and it's like perfect to the way it's could be. So manage our OCD versus actually understanding how they got to the conclusion they got to, how they got to the recommendation they got to, and how do they assess the implications of the decision that they're suggesting? Because that also kind of triggers, thinking forward rather than thinking based on whatever back data or historical data, and this is what we should be doing. So what do we anticipate to happen? As a result, I think that's a really good point. In many of the conversations, it was coming up that mentoring is such a critical point for development that Gen Z is looking for. They're not looking for somebody to tell them how to use ChatGPT. They're looking for somebody who can actually teach them something meaningful that they cannot find elsewhere, which is down to the experience, right? Like whatever we have to give, it's not in ChatGPT, is experience. Hey, how do I go into that meeting and how do I present that in the most impactful way? The reality for now is you're gonna meet a boomer or a Gen X, maybe millennial if you're lucky, and that's what you should be anticipating. And that's the best way to prepare for it. Their verbal communication tends to be still quite blunt, especially when it comes to their development. Now, we tend to forget how we were. Might assume I was also quite blunt when I was talking to my bosses back in the days, but they're quite absolute. You don't give me this, or they don't say anything. You walk out of a conversation, you think, yeah, we're fine. Next day, they resign. Because this is a little bit where they are contradictory in their behavior in a way. On the one hand, they're very confident, and on the other hand, they are quite insecure. On the one hand, they are very vocal, but then when it comes to themselves, they tend to be quietly exiting the conversation, quietly exiting the company, and to tell you afterwards, you know what, I got something else, and I get a good learning experience. Well, I could have given you a learning experience. You didn't tell me. Well, I kind of did, but you didn't listen. Did you though? So there is a nuance in the verbal communication when it comes to their development. They are vocal when it comes to that, or what's your observation if you have any?
Most of them are less vocal for sure. I may sound like a broken record here, but I'll go back to it starts with us, the older generation. We are now the old village people. We are the Gandalfs of the world and the Grey Cloaks of the world, and we need to be willing to sit by the fire and share the story and the tales and the experience, because that is something we only have. You need to have suffered and gone through the adversity to be able to share it. The way it worked for me, and half the time we're super busy executives running around from meetings and we want speed and we have so many things in our mind that our first reaction to a Gen Z is, oh, you little kid, that was dumb, piss off, be better, do better. And sometimes we do it at home with our kids, to be fair. And then we're like, oh, I'm really sorry. I was not a proper person to you. I am sorry. So we need to catch ourselves from being reactionary, because we're so busy that we get reactionary and we expect better and we don't allow for failure, or we're super demanding. And some people on the same side, some people will come and say, no, we should be demanding. We should be like, please, we're developing a better generation. It's our duty to that generation. The way it worked for me best, as an example, is I had a couple of Gen Zs that joined the team previously. I was in McCain. Every time I joined, I actually opened my house for coffee. I didn't do meetings at home because I work from home once in a while. I didn't do meetings in the office. I'm like, you're about to join, or you're a new joiner. My work from home days is Tuesday, Friday. Pick a day, come to my house. I have an amazing espresso machine, best coffee in Lille, and Lille is a very low barrier. And I would spend an hour with them. And then they would go around the office and talk. It's like the VP, CPO, whatever, had me at his house and we had coffee. And I'm a 23-year-old and he's a 45-year-old. And he spent an hour with me talking about life, the universe, and everything. And that for me was the link to open up the conversation. And I'm skipping like 2 levels here. I'm skipping director, senior manager, and I'm going straight to the source. And I'm telling director, senior manager, I'm going to skip you. I'm going to supersede you. I'm going to have, sorry for the quotes, the baby come to my house and have coffee with me, because I want the direct access to the younger generation, for them to be able to know that I'm a human being, flawed, with emotions, with problems, that I bring all this at work. I am as broken as the next guy. I'm not perfect. I don't want to be the ivory tower. And when I'm not seen as the ivory tower or the guy in the corner office, and that's why I don't have a corner office, then I'm approachable. Am I approachable at all dates and times? No. Are there times that I'm busy and I will tell you not now, later? Yes. But because you've had that first coffee interaction, or whatever that first coffee, you know I'm a human. You know that I'm not a title and I'm not a salary and I'm not 130 people manager. I am the next person. And maybe, and that helps them a bit. And I have relationships with some of the Gen Zs of the company that I left, that they still message me on LinkedIn or WhatsApp. And they check in on me of like, we miss you. When can we come for coffee? When are you coming to the next rugby game? I take pride in that, but it was intentional and it took time and effort. And again, not perfect. I have been rude and abrupt and a proper Generation X to the Xennials once in a while by being not good enough. Think about it again, rewrite it. They did not quit, thank God.
My question is, what is your biggest lesson out of this? Are there things you do differently now? Are there things you keep on doing?
I think it's one word: patience. Patience. I need to be patient with my kids at home when they do silly things or where they don't get it the first time, or when my youngest refuses to go to sleep without me being next to her in the bed. And then I have to educate her and enable her to sleep on her own. I can do the shouting thing and the you go sleep on your own now. She can't quit. She can't leave the house. Right? She can't run away at 10. I cannot do it to the 20-year-old or the 25-year-old because they can't quit and they should. So it's a matter of patience, realizing that the moment you accept, and I think it's an acceptance that this world will be inherited by the next generation. We are finite. It will end for us in some shape or form. We're gonna be gone. That comes with the duty of, at least in my mindset, of build the next phase, leave something better behind. That better is Gen Z as we speak, and it will be our kids, Gen Alpha, one moment later. That's why we need to meet them more than halfway. In most cases, we're actually doing a lot of other people I've seen, not all of them, but I've seen a lot of people trying to do the other way. No, you need to meet me 80% my way because of seniority, because of title, because I pay you the money, because you want to be here. And suddenly Gen Z is like, no, I don't want to be here. Goodbye. I'm like, and I'm cheerleading for them. I'm like, good for you. Maybe that older stubborn person learned something from you quitting on them. Quit, meet them halfway, more than halfway, because they will inherit, in a cheesy line, they will inherit the world, not us.
Yeah, and I think what you're saying is our observation is there are two camps. One camp is the current leaders who are basically projecting. So I suffered, I had it really hard to progress, so I'm going to make you suffer. And then there's the other camp, and I reckon you're sitting in that other camp is, okay, so we went, this path was ours, but this path is very different in a very different context, very different time that we were walking that path. So now, whatever the path is for that generation, we're supporting it, we're enabling it. And that's not to say that we're babysitting them. There are still, they need to learn, they need to build resilience, and the resilience, hardship, all of that can only be built, it cannot be taught. It's something that they have to experience by going through difficult situations, difficult being fired, finding a job and suck at it and be sad about it. Like all of those things need to happen so that they build stamina, resistance, and all of that. So, but those two camps still exist. And my sense is that within corporate, the latter camp starts to become bigger. Within family owned private companies, medium sized companies, it's for whatever reason, there is this belief that despite the fact that it's really hard to find talent in the people, that somebody owes them something, and then they can actually project the hardship onto the next generation and get away with it. Well, in some cases they will, but in most cases it's going to become significantly harder. So that's my kind of closing statement a little bit on the.
It's a great observation because, and maybe we close on that. Public corporations that are big have a lot of people, to your point, family owned, and also startups have a lot of pride and ego because it's the family business or it's the startup and I developed it, I started it. You need to fit my mold. You need to go through pride and ego death. I had a serious accident a couple of years back. It killed my pride and ego. I've destroyed my own self. I have no, I mean, I still have it once in a while, but I have no self. The moment it's not about you and it's about us. It's not them. It's not us and them. It's us. We're all the same, one common humanity. The moment you realize it's about us, Gen Z is me. and I'm Gen Z. Inga is me, and I'm Panos, whatever, and Inga is Panos. You got it. And then love and compassion. The rest, we will not take money to our graves. We will not take the houses to our graves. I will not take my stock options to the grave. I will not take my private equity to the grave. Maybe my kids will take it, but it's so finite. Wake up.
Yeah, indeed. Vaios, any reflections? Final question?
No, I think what Panos says, and because we talked a little bit also for his onboarding into Young Blossom 25, is very, very humble and very different compared to what you see, especially in corporate right now, or all over the years, I guess, Inga, because it's not only what I see now, I guess it's what most of us have been facing throughout the years. So for me, Panos, please allow me to say that it's a small life lesson. Our discussion a couple of weeks ago and today, so really thank you for that, and truly humbled to have the chance to have you on our podcast.
Amazing. Panos, we usually don't do that. Do you have a question for us that you would?
We never do that, Inga.
I know, but today, I feel like introducing a new one, because maybe there is a question on your mind that you want to throw at us.
Yeah, there is. I always like to throw randomly what's in my mind. We're living in the matrix, to be clear. What we live is in a simulation. There is 98% chance it's a simulation. So if we're in the matrix, and we had, based on your interactions with Gen Z, which are more than mine on the podcast, if you could teach them Kung Fu, Neo learns in the Matrix, what Kung Fu move, corporate Kung Fu move, would you teach them so they can be better immediately?
I have mine. I can go. Thank God my husband made me watch The Matrix, so I remotely understand what you're talking about. And for me, it's communication. It's my experience, especially with the younger ones, and I kind of categorize them a little bit until 20 plus. And we see that with guests who are on the older side, so closer touching the 29, that's what Gen Z kind of ends, right? They're actually quite good. They're quite articulate. Some of them are exceptional in how they communicate and how they're able to articulate why things are important to them, why they are behaving in a certain way. Because it's one thing to behave the way you behave, and another thing to actually be able to explain what you're doing, which projects to everything else you do in life, you do in work, right? Many of them, they have this idea, and it's important to me, and it's really important, and I really like it, and it's really important. I got it. Why? Because this is how we've been raised, and this is really important to me, and I really like it, and I really want it, and this is really, and I can do whatever I want. I get it. Why? So communication is something that I would highly encourage them to do. And to some extent, the stupid PowerPoint exercises that you mentioned, they taught us communication in quite a annoying way. Like, I did not enjoy. But looking back at it, I didn't enjoy the moment, but looking back at it, okay, we developed ourselves the OCDs that we are, all contained with, but it also sharpened a lot. How do you articulate a problem, a solution, your own desire to develop? So there is a lot of merit in it, and communication can unlock a lot of things. And the other point, forget about us and how we've been brought up. Communication and empathy that can be transported through that is going to become increasingly more relevant and important, because AI can do many things. AI can do a lot of, question solving. And if you have the right questions and you develop the right critical thinking, AI can do a lot of that work. So knowledge is going to become more commoditized. So now it's even more important. How do you take whatever AI is giving you, and how do you put it forward? So for me, it's communication as a package.
I'm not so much into Kung Fu moves, Pano. My son has started recently doing Tai Chi. Not sure what this is even. So I just take the car, drive him there, I leave him, and I just take them back. So too many things that are out of my control nowadays. But answering your question very briefly, and what I try to do also with my Gen Zers in my team is I try to teach them the importance of putting a little bit extra plus in being resilient, because things change, circumstances change. I always echo what Inga said when she was my GM a couple of years ago for Greece and Cyprus. She said that one day we woke up and we were in the middle of a war with Russia and Ukraine. Some years ago you had COVID. So it's a world where you wake up and you don't know what is happening, what is coming upon you. In such a fluid world, you need always to try to be a little bit more resilient in everything that you do. So not sure if I'm getting through the message to my team, but this would be like my 2 cents to your question.
Adversity is a privilege, yes. You need to see adversity as a privilege, not as a problem that you need to avoid. You have to embrace adversity because it will find you wherever you hide. No discussion.
Great. Well, that was fun. The last thing to do is to do our favorite lightning round. And fast-paced questions, don't overthink it. Whatever first comes to mind, just throw it at me. Your favorite chat channel?
WhatsApp by far.
Social media you spend the most time on?
LinkedIn professionally, YouTube personally.
You get your music from?
Spotify and a bit of YouTube.
You get your podcasts from?
Spotify.
Your favorite AI tool?
Currently Gemini.
Physical books or audiobooks?
Kindle.
What is the one skill you would recommend Gen Z to learn?
Communication and resilience.
And critical thinking. I noted down. I thought you made quite a good point on critical thinking earlier on. What is the one skill you would recommend our generation to learn?
Love and contribution.
Beautiful. Like it. A famous person you would like to meet?
The current Greek Prime Minister, Mitsotakis, because I think the country is doing pretty okay. We should be doing more for the country. And I think we need more people like Inga, Vaios, and Panos to actually run the country. I think Kyriakos has started it, but we can do better. And I'm not New Democracy and I'm not Republican, etc. I'm more on the socialist left side, but I need to give kudos where kudos are due.
Oh, very nice. Very nice. Well, Panos, it was a blast having you on the show. I enjoyed it a lot. We enjoyed it a lot. Thank you so much for joining us today.
My pleasure. Thank you for having me. It was gorgeous.
Thanks for being part of Young Blossom 25. Panos, for all people listening out there, find us on YouTube, Spotify, wherever you get your podcast from. Until next time, see you.
Bye.